Welcome everyone, well arrived. Yesterday we had a pause and today we find ourselves on September the 2nd. Today is, by the way, the 270th anniversary of Great Britain, alongside with all of their colonies, adopting the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we all use nowadays. Funny thing, it was the 2nd of September back then, and the day after was September the 14th, because they had to adjust to the proper calendar system. Now, talking about this September the 2nd in current world, we have the release of the beta of Dragonflight. As expected, I had correctly predicted, given what we heard from the developers, that the alpha was going to last somewhere in the realm of 6 weeks, 6 different updates, getting to release all of the class trees, and once they were all out, we would have gotten the beta. The only question was, are we going to get a 1 week pause before the launch of the beta, or are we straight going to get into the beta once we get all of the talents? And we actually did. We actually are in the beta now. There are quite a few changes that you will be able to see if you are in the beta. Now you have the full UI of the new expansion working in the beta. You have the new ability to copy your characters in the beta. You have things like add-ons working, or kind of working in the beta, etc, etc. But what is taking more important points for today is the release of something that was missing, which is the Vengeance Demon Hunter Talent Tree. Because when Demon Hunter was released, actually it was just Havoc. Blizzard left us a little bit of a snippet of a note saying, yeah, sorry guys, Vengeance is actually not quite ready yet, wait a little bit more. Apparently a little bit more ended up being not 1 or 2 days, it ended up being a full week. But now the Vengeance Tree is out. Now, I would define the Vengeance Tree as a pillar, a rock, massive, thick, immovable. Why? Because it's very solid, it's very stable, it's very standard, it's very reliable. However, it is also very boring, very dull. It doesn't really inspire you a lot when you see a rock. And that's kind of what the Vengeance Demon Hunter 3 looks. Now this is what currently the Demon Hunters will be able to play with. They are Vengeance, they have the Demon Hunter 3 and the Vengeance 3. So let's first spend our Demon Hunter points in the general tree like this. This is the mock-up Demon Hunter 3, but then also let's get the new tree, the new available tree, which is the one for Vengeance. The way I say it's kind of boring is because it is very, very linear. What I mean by that is you're going to have one straight line for your Fell Devastation, for your I-Beam / Fell Devastation and your main stronger ability, and then to the left you have an interesting rework, or I guess additions to your Soul Cleave, and to the right you have your build, which is more similar to what you have now in Shadowlands, which is your fiery brand spreading build of Mythic Plus. So when you start, of course, in the first level, you have some very familiar point. You start with Fell Devastation itself, you go into Frailty, which is going to have a much improved, possibly, if you go down this row, a much improved role in your rotation, in your build, and then you have Firebrand, which will also have an improved features in your build. Then you have the triple familiar icon of your Demon Spikes, which get a little bit more power than what they have had this expansion in Shadowlands. You have one to increase your parry when you Demon Spike, you have one to also deal back damage for high threat, to help you with threat generation, and you have one for reduced damage taken after Demon Spike ends. This might be a little bit more important than what it looks like. You're like, wait a second, I am using Demon Spikes to take less damage. Why would I want to take less damage once Demon Spikes has ended? Because Demon Spikes is armor. Demon Spikes reduces physical damage, while this one also counts for magical damage. So you can use Demon Spikes before magical damage comes in and get 10% less damage from magical attacks with this. You also have some returning things still, like taking less damage while Immolation Aura is active. You also have the Fell Devastation increased healing based on your missing health. And then we start the part of the empowerment of your Soul Cleave. every 10 soul fragments you consume increases the damage of your next soul cleave by 40%. This will be a trend down this line to empower your soul cleave. This one is going to heal you for an additional 54% attack power over 6 seconds. Then you have this one, an empowerment to Frailty, now also causes afflicted enemies to deal 4% reduced damage to you, and enemy struck by Soul Cleave are afflicted by Frailty. So Frailty now is no longer only affected by Sigil of Flame, now Frailty also is affected by your spammable ability, your soul fragment consuming ability, Soul Cleave. You then have the return of Spirit Bomb down the left side, Spirit Bomb which also affects enemies with Frailty. And then you have a possibly quite powerful ability, albeit nerfed in this state, but it has a little bit of an extra. Consuming a Soul Fragment reduces all damage you take by 1% for 4 seconds. At 2 points it's 2% less damage taken for 4 seconds. Multiple applications may overlap, which means, for example, when you use Spirit Bomb, and you are consuming 5 soul fragments at once, if you have waited to have your max soul fragments and then consume them with Spirit Bomb, you consume 5 at the same time, which means 10% less damage taken for 4 seconds thanks to Painbringer. Down the center you have even more buffs to Demon Spikes. This one is still in milliseconds, but it's increasing the duration of Demon Spikes by 2 seconds. You have the return of 2 very familiar legendaries, Collective Anguish and Darkler Boon. The difference is that Collective Anguish is still the same, but Darkler Boon has been turned away from an RNG button. Now, when Fell Devastation finishes fully channeling, it refreshes 20 to 40% of its cooldown and refunds 20 to 40 Fury. It's no longer this massive, it's no longer you have a chance to reset it or not at all, now you just get some of the cooldown back. You then also have a couple of synergy points down the middle for Immolation Aura, which is interesting because Immolation Aura is going to have a lot more down this side, but this one, Fallout, Immolation Aura's initial burst has a chance to shatter lesser soul fragments, and this one, Volatile Flameblood, when Immolation Aura crits, it shatters a lesser soul fragment from the enemy and can only happen once every 1.5 seconds. This is quite useful. It's giving a little bit more value to your crit stat as a Vengeance Demon Hunter with Immolation Aura. And because it's a lesser soul fragment, it can work with things like Painbringer to get you less damage taken, and it can work with things like Spirit Bomb, of course. Then you can continue down this side for the completion of the Soul Cleave build. This one right here, Focused Cleave, gives you 50% increased damage to your primary target with Soul Cleave. This one, Soulmonger, when consuming a soul fragment would heal you above full HP, it shields you instead, up to a maximum of 10%, I believe, of your max HP. This is helpful. If you have been playing Vengeance Demon Hunters quite a few times in the meta, you have been to a situation where you were just overcapping soul fragments very, very often. At certain periods in the meta, it was even about literally continuing to spawn extra fragments, so they would continue to be auto-consumed because they were overcapping, and that was your main source of healing, which was quite boring, of course, because it required no real tactical play. But this talent now can help you, giving you an Absorb Shield, so to actually give them more usage if you're at full HP. This one right here, again, more points, more importance in Frailty. Frailty now also increases all damage you deal to the affected enemies by 8%. And if you have gone down this line, Frailty is applied by your Sigils, it's applied by your Soul Cleave, it's applied by your Spirit Bomb, so you have tons of way to get this one to be up at all times on all enemies, pretty much. The final points of the left side is the Weak-Willed. Multiple applications of Frailty may overlap. Soul Cleave applies Frailty to your primary target for 5 seconds. This also means that you can now apply Frailty with Soul Cleave with this talent, or apply Frailty with Soul Cleave with this talent. So you can skip this, for example, and still be able to apply it with Soul Cleave. What is important for all Demon Hunter players is that you have just seen many ways to apply Frailty, yet Frailty no longer has a 20-second duration, it only has a 5-second duration. So you can be in a situation where, thanks to Frailty having multiple applications, overlapping multiple applications, for example, overlapping the extra damage you deal with Frailty. 3 stacks of Frailty, 24% damage increase. 3 stacks of Frailty, 12% less damage taken by enemies. you can do something like put down your first sigil, then you use Soul Cleave to apply Frailty once, the sigil explodes, that's the second stack of Frailty, and then you use Spirit Bomb, that's the third stack of Frailty, and then you use Sigil again, and that's the fourth stack of Frailty. So you do have windows and ways to get multiple stacks of Frailty to overlap to then benefit from these new powers, like more damage done to enemies affected by Frailty and less damage taken to enemies affected by Frailty, and to stack with one another. This is the points in the left side, a very Soul Cleave centric, very Frailty centric type of build. Now let's get rid of the left side, let's get rid of all this stuff, continue down the middle. We pointed out some of the synergy with the Immolate to the right and to the left of the center. You then have, of course, Ruinous Bulwark, something you already have. Fell Devastation heals for an additional 15%, and 50% of its overhealing is converted into an Absorb Shield. You then continue with Feed the Demon. Consuming a Soul Fragment reduces the remaining cooldown of Demon Spikes by 0.5 seconds. Your three final options are what was determined already, the choice between Fodder to the Flame, Covenant ability for Necro, and Elysian Decree, Covenant ability for Kyrian. You then have your returning Last Resort Cheat Death ability right at the bottom of the tree, and then to the left your new button, Soul Carver. Besides the big damage burst, which is only for single targets, so this is not going to be some sort of AoE Mythic Plus button that you use, you do have immediately shatter 2 lesser soul fragments from the target and 1 additional lesser soul fragment every 1 second. So it's more soul fragments can be used to continue your soul fragment generation for things like Spirit Bomb and Soul Cleave and your Frailty stacking on this side. It can be quite handy. But as we have seen so far, the left side is very Soul Cleave centric, the center side is basically giving you back all of your main core powers, you know, your Fell Devastation stuff, your Covenant abilities and your legendaries that you were using, etc., are all coming back right down the middle. What is up with the right side? So in the right side you will notice many things that are quite familiar to what you were using if you ever played around the Immolation spreading build together with Fiery Brand. You have Agonizing Flames, which makes you have a 50% increased duration to Immolation Aura, which can be paired to one of the new talents we mentioned about giving Immolation Aura a chance to shatter lesser soul fragments. You have afflicting an enemy with a sigil reduces the cooldown of your sigils by 2 seconds. You have yet to be implemented talent, but next to it you have a cooldown choice, the choice between Soul Barrier and Bulk Extraction. They are both quite interesting, especially because they are not in conflict with some other talents. You can just choose them on their own now. You have also another interesting talent, Revel in Pain. When Fiery Brand expires on your primary target, you gain a shield that absorbs up to a portion of the damage for 15 seconds based on your damage dealt to them while Fiery Brand was active. The right side is also where you get to take Sigil of Chains as a Demon Hunter, which can be quite helpful in Mythic Plus keys. As for the last part of the right side of the tree for Vengeance, you have the return of Burning Alive. Every 2 seconds, Fiery Brand spreads to one nearby enemy, followed by, of course, Charred Flesh. Immolation Aura damage increases the duration of your Fiery Brand by half a second. Next to it, you have Fire Demise. Fiery Brand increases the fire damage you deal to the target by 25%. And lastly, Down in Flames. Fiery Brand has 1 additional charge. So down this line, you can take more or less all of the old talents you were using for your Immolation Aura spreading plus Fiery Brand damage with a few extra things like the fiery damage increase and the second charge of Fiery Brand. That's why I, let's just say, compared the Vengeance Talent Tree to a rock, because as you can see from the choices, it's very, very solid. You have 3 different very clear options. Very likely you will always go down the middle, because the middle stuff is just going to be too strong for either build. You know, having a strong Fell Devastation, having the option of Collective Anguish plus Dark Lair Boon, having the buff to your Fel Devastation, having your Feed the Demon for more Demon Spike uptime, Demon Spike which is made even stronger by having also Parry, the Reflect for more threat, etc, etc, and lastly your final choice options with Elysian Decree, Last Resort. All the center stuff is quite standard and stable for whatever build you want to go for, and then you have the choice of left or right. A Frailty centered, a Soul Cleave, plus lots of extra ways to generate more soul shards along the way, to consume more of them, to get more Frailty effect of Soul Cleave and of Spirit Bomb, to gain bonuses from the weak wield power at the end, or the right side, which is more similar to what you're playing with now, Firebrand and Firebrand spreading with Immolation Aura. That's why I said it's very solid, but it's also very standard, so it can be quite boring, because as you have seen here, there isn't really anything new. Yes, there is this one. This one is new. There is the Soul Carver button, which is new. Don't forget what we said when we looked at Demon Hunter the first time, that Vengeance was the major victor of the general Demon Hunter 3. Because remember, on top of this, don't forget that Vengeance is also gaining things like an AoE stun, Vengeance is gaining Vengeful Retreat, Vengeance is gaining Blur, is gaining Darkness, Vengeance still has the option for the Hunt, he still has the option to gain Demonic, he still has the option to gain Blur, not just as a 20% DR, but also as a 30% DR, so there are still quite a lot of power that go into Vengeance coming straight from the Demon Hunter 3. Way more than any other tank. All of these things are quite more powerful for Vengeance, so when you put all of this stuff together with the Talent Tree of Vengeance, it has become much more of a solid spec, much more of a less squishy, I would say, spec than it is currently. You also have a few more ways to do single target damage, which was your main weakness, I guess, as a Vengeance Demon Hunter tank right now. So overall, it definitely looks like an improvement compared to what we have in Shadowlands, albeit perhaps a little bit boring at the moment. So with this recap of the Demon Hunter 3, now done for Vengeance as well, to the rest of this Friday. Let me guys know what you think, of course, about these talents, perhaps even you as Vengeance mains. What are your first thoughts about these talents, full knowing that they will be changed multiple times before they go live, but still, looking at the first impressions is always valuable, especially to Blizzard, to gauge the feedback of the players regarding these talent options, but let me know down in the comments. With this being said, we can now leave each other, of course. Thanks as usual to all of my patrons for supporting me and allowing me to continue to produce content in WoW. Now that the beta is out, I'm assuming it's only a matter of days before I will get in, one way or another. Still, thanks to Blizzard, of course, for leaving me out of the alpha for almost 2 months. Very appreciated. You can support me by liking and commenting down below and also subscribing to this channel as well. That will be a good help for the growth of the channel, but also for further social interactions. You can follow me on Twitter as well as subscribing to my Patreon right down at these 2 links. Subscribing, which will give you access to my Discord server, wherever you want to come in, ask some questions, something about feedback for future content, for past content, some type of content you would like to see in the future more or less. I'm usually always available there on Discord. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I have lost track of time. When am I going to sleep? When am I going to wake up? Who knows? It's like a roulette nowadays. That can't be healthy.